And you may be the nicest person in the world, but that officer doesn't know you, doesn't know what's going to happen, doesn't know how you're going to react in a highly emotional, tense situation. And oftentimes they're dealing with people in very brief, quick encounters with limited knowledge and sometimes conflicting information. So there's a lot going on there for those officers. But they still have to act appropriately. We try to train them very well to do that. But, you know, we have to look at things that happen from the perspective of the officer when they're out there and the circumstances that are involved. And for that, those reasons, I think people that have a really in-depth knowledge of the work we do and the things that we encounter, you know, it helps them to investigate these things. Certainly, we're not always correct. And if we're not, our goal should be to make sure that we correct behaviors or correct practices. And again, as I said before, I don't have any problem with reviewing policies and procedures and auditing the work that we do. I think that's incumbent upon us to do that. So in that respect, I think that there's a great value there. But again, as an agency chief, the law enforcement head, the guy that it has to fall on my shoulders and not pass the buck, I need to be the one that makes the decision on what the finding will be and what we do with that officer or how that matter is resolved.
Thank you. Bob?
There's a long list of questions I'm sorry didn't get asked tonight. One concept I want to introduce in closing is the notion that it's not to look at law enforcement conduct as whether it's legal or not is a mistake. There is a lot of law enforcement conduct that is technically legal but is ill-advised, is a mistake, creates problems. It may or may not be misconduct. The example was the comparison between Davis Police Department and Santa Cruz Police Department. I was very surprised to observe that Santa Cruz police officers, it appeared to be part of the organizational ethic, tended to treat people with very patient forbearance. It was amazing. I was out on ride-alongs with them, and it was really hard for someone to get a Santa Cruz officer riled up. It was not unusual to observe by the end of an angry incident that people would apologize to the officer for being angry. By contrast, in Davis, where they've had a lot of turnover and there are a lot of newer officers, they have a problem with officers who are being officious, are being perceived as rude. The vast majority of citizen complaints I see and hear about in Davis are white middle-class citizens who are pulled over on traffic stops. And the issue isn't that they shouldn't have gotten the ticket, but the way they were treated. I found that fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So my point in all of this is if you are looking at the idea of civilian oversight from the perspective of just citizen complaints, I once compared this to trying to study elephants based on their feces. You need to look at a department holistically in terms of customer service, in terms of, for example, is their equipment operational, in terms of their morale, in terms of how they're handling calls. How are they handling domestic violence calls? How are they handling mental illness calls? How much training are they receiving? And then one other thing, I have a lot of bully pulpits I could be up on. In my fantasy world, to be a peace officer would be the equivalent of being a doctor or a lawyer. And in order to become a peace officer, you would have to have gotten an advanced degree and licensed by the state. Because you want to know something? In my view, being a peace officer is harder than being an emergency room doctor. The breadth of knowledge you need and skill set is much broader than anything in the law or in medicine. And yet we have people that go to academies for 6 weeks and they're peace officers once they've gone through FTO.
Okay, thank you. Barbara?
And again, I'm just happy that so many people are here and that you continue to pursue civilian oversight in Humboldt County. A few things I just want to touch on again, I think, is the importance of independent investigations. Even if you establish an auditor model of oversight here, I think that auditors should be able to conduct independent investigations in cases where the police department doesn't do an investigation, and and/or cases where the investigation is not complete. On civilian review boards, I think that they're incredibly can have an incredible impact on increasing community confidence in the police, and in ensuring that the police are doing what the community wants the police to do as far as the how that job is being carried out. Often, when we would do investigations in Berkeley, I would know how the review board was gonna how they were gonna rule, because I thought I knew the case. Often they ruled a very different way than what I was thinking. I'm the professional, but they had the community insight, and it wasn't off the wall. It was very important insight. So I don't think that you should not consider that model. I think it's an important model to consider. Again, I believe in layers. You need to look at independence, adequate funding, trained professional staff. We have this national association. We go around the country, consultants from the association, and work with new boards and work with cities wanting to start oversight. So continue to use us as a resource, and good luck. I think it's a very important process.
Thank you. Chief Nielsen?
Well, I just want to say that I think these types of forums are an important part of good governance. Ultimately, the police serve the people, and we answer to the people as it should be in our society. So it's appropriate that we be accountable to the community and transparent in the work we do. But ultimately, I'm, in my organization, need to be the one who's held accountable for the actions of my officers, and I believe that's as it should be. That's not to say that I certainly couldn't use some help and advice in that regard, but ultimately, as the sheriff said, I think that it's important for both he and I to know that the buck stops with us, and I think that we need to have high expectations of our people. We need to hold them accountable, but we, as the heads of our organizations, also need to be held accountable for the behavior of our people, and I firmly believe that. And again, I think that to have assistance in that is a good thing, but again, I don't want that to be taken out of my hands either.
Thank you. Christina?
Well, I am still optimistic, and I think that before this decade is out, we're going to have at least one review board operating, hopefully efficiently and effectively. I look forward to a more peaceful community where everyone is treated fairly, humanely, and respectfully, and that everyone is everyone: law enforcement, suspects, witnesses, people that are just in the community concerned. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you. In closing, I want to thank the Humboldt County Human Rights Commission for sponsoring this forum, to the panelists for their participation and discussion, and the league volunteers who helped make this go smoothly, and especially to all of you for coming tonight and for asking such good questions. So let's give everybody a hand who participated.